Bruce Gribaldi. Bruce fucking Gribaldi. I'm sorry, but Bruce fucking Gribaldi. That dude was a kiss-ass to the professors, super misogynistic, and somehow overbearingly PC, all at the same time. There probably wasn't anyone more reviled than him in the class. Maybe the program. So, of course, he'd succeed before anyone else. Bruce didn't try to make anything he actually liked. He just tried to stay a step ahead of trends. He saw Coons and Katie Nolan, and so he tried to be post all that noise. That stuff wasn't over at all. It was just starting. But Bruce wanted to react against it like those minimalist douchebags did to the Abexes. If Coons did those crazy reproductions of balloons with completely different materials, Bruce would do sloppy paintings of reproductions, supposedly a simulacrum of a simulacrum. Who's to say they weren't just paintings of the originals? But some scout for a big gallery ate that shit up and ran to Soho to say he'd found the next big thing. There wasn't even a name for the current big thing. We all went to Area to dance and party off the end of the semester. Yeah, by then, all of the great art party spots like Tier 3 and the Mud Club, they'd already closed down. Of course, Celia and I missed them before we even knew about them. But Area was supposed to be amazing and, obviously, impossible to get into. We heard Andy might be there, or Jean might be DJing. Maybe Keith was having sex in the bathroom. We didn't see any of them there. Maybe that's why we got in that night. But the club did have this crazy gardens theme happening, with live human statues peeing into fountains. Celia got out on the dance floor, and Bruce is in the middle of some people. Not many, because, you know, it's Bruce, and he's probably the stiffest dancer you've ever seen. He'd get that white lady overbite my aunt gets on the dance floor at bar mitzvahs, and he stuck out his thumbs, jerking his elbow with his thumb, popping back and forth like he's hitchhiking or something. He'd do this with both arms, the left and the right. And then he'd repeat. His legs didn't move at all. It was just his arms. So he looked like a fucked up robot. The club probably didn't last much longer because they accidentally let him in. Then out of nowhere, Bruce started yelling, "I'm the Alpha and the Omega!" It's like, what? Celia and I watched him like, what the fuck is going on? "I'm the Alpha and the Omega!" We looked over at our friend who's watching this, watching it like he's an anthropologist, studying something he's never seen before, taking it very seriously. We asked him what's going on. He said, "I guess Merode and Finch want to see his slides." Bruce's slides? I couldn't fucking believe it. I turned to Celia, and she slouched 2 inches when she'd heard. I told her, "It doesn't mean anything." And she said, "I know it doesn't mean anything, but it also does." We made eye contact with Bruce by mistake, and he took one of his thumbs and pointed it directly at his heart. And he started yelling, "I'm number 1!" He jabbed his thumb into his chest, sneering at us like he wanted to fight or something. "I'm the number 1 fucking artist!" Before we passed out that night, Celia went through all of her slides. She made a big racket, swearing at herself whenever she didn't think something was good enough. I was pretty out of it after Areas, so I don't remember saying anything to her at home, but the next morning, she shook me awake and asked why I wasn't ready to go yet. I said, "What do you want?" barely opening my eyes to see the clock. "Why are you waking me up? It's before noon." And she said, "You said you'd go with me. You told me to go." What did I agree to? She said, "I'm the one who agreed." And she held on to her portfolio bag. And she was already dressed. She said, "I wasn't gonna go. You told me to go." "Go where?" I asked. "To the fun gallery." She opened drawers in my dresser. I told her that I didn't say anything about the fun gallery. But she insisted that we talked about fun for 30 minutes. I didn't think so. So she said, I was going to go straight to Mary Boone with my slides, but you talked me down from that ledge. I'm not ready for Soho. Or maybe Soho's not ready for me. I know they aren't showing women. But maybe Patty at Fun will look at my stuff. I tried lifting my head off my pillow and said, I don't think Fun shows any women either. And she said, we talked about that, but we agreed that they might be more open to seeing my shit. I said, that doesn't sound like me, and tried to sit up. And she said, we need to start recording our conversations. I finally got myself upright and asked, didn't the angel tell us to hold off? And Celia pulled a shirt out of my drawer and threw it at me. She asked, why are you backing out right now? Is this just because you're hungover? No, it's because I'm sober. She threw a pair of pants at me and said, I thought we were doing this to prove that Bruce is a fucking douche. Well, that did sound more like me. We walked down to Fun around noon. No appointment with Patty Astor. Celia was just gonna barge in and demand that Patty look at her shit. If this happened when I first met Celia, when she was spray painting asshole across asshole's paintings, I would have been like, yeah, go in there and fuck shit up, Celia. But after the past year, it felt a little desperate to me. I think she was absolutely freaking out, but oh my God, she'd do anything to mask that. I couldn't rationalize with her. Yeah, Fun was just for graffiti artists like Jean, Keith, Kenny Sharp, Fab Five Freddy. She so badly wanted to seem like she was in control. She was not in control. We got to the front door and a paper sign was taped inside the window that said back in 5. So we waited 5 minutes, and we waited another 5 minutes, and another 5. Celia fidgeted around like a toddler about to pee its pants. We sat on the curb for half an hour before somebody walked up behind us and said, it's you girls again. We turned around to see this incredibly tall man, but we didn't recognize him. He said, don't tell me I remember you, but you don't remember me. We stared up at him. He wasn't wearing any makeup. Not any of the blue glittery makeup across his cheeks anyway. He wore a very tight-fitting, blindingly white dress shirt and matching pants, a bright red tie cut down the middle of his chest, and he had a clutch-sized purse slung over his shoulder. You're the angel, Celia said. He said, you can call me Dell, sweetie. We stood up, and he looked down at Celia's portfolio bag. And he sighed, loud, not hiding what he thought at all. He asked, what can I help you with, girls? And Celia said, we're waiting for Fun to open up. And then what, dear? And he raised an eyebrow at Celia's portfolio bag. And she said, I want to show Patty my work. But she wasn't anywhere near as sure of herself as she was before we left the apartment. I knew she didn't think she was a little Shaka Khan yet. The angel surprised us when he pulled a key out of his purse. He said, you will be waiting a long time, hun. Patty isn't here today. He turned to the gallery's door. And don't camp out here, he said. I don't think she'll be looking at any portfolios. We asked him if he worked at Fun. Oh, he said, I wouldn't say work. I sit around, I lounge, I hang out. If somebody actually comes in, maybe I'll stop them from stealing something. Maybe. We walked into the gallery and another graffiti show was up. It was okay. If you liked sitting on the subway in 1985, you'd probably like that show. Because if you put some orange seats in there, it'd look like the F train. The show had been up for a few weeks, but I didn't see any stickers letting people know it already sold. He said, Patty's not here, but I'm bored and not even halfway through the day. Let me see your work. Celia pulled a binder of slides out of her satchel and handed it to him. He pressed the discs out of their plastic pockets and held them up to the light. He said, "We get young pretenders trying to drop off their work all the time. But I like you. You dress well." He flipped through the slides faster and faster. He said, "These are photographs." He gave her that eyebrow and said, "I don't think Patty's ever shown photographs here." He stared at one for a while, trying to figure out what he looked at. They probably all seemed to be the same thing. Times Square. He said, "Honey, these might be better for the Tourism Bureau. Are these all just Times Square?" No, she said. "Well, yeah, I guess. You'd probably need a projector to see what I'm doing with them." He said, "No can do, dearie. We don't have such advanced technology at Fun." He put down the slides and said, "Listen, sweetie. Don't tell anyone this, but we're closing next week. We're having one more show, and that's that. No more Fun. Nobody's buying graffiti anymore. Patty's calling it quits." Celia looked at him like her dad just put the dog down. She asked if he was sure. Were they really closing? But why would he lie about that? I don't know why she put so much faith into Fun that morning. It was just a dumb idea. When we got back home, she said she felt stupid for trying, and she yelled a couple long fucks in her room for good measure. She tried to keep that brave Celia face while we talked to the angel, though. She asked, "Did we miss the cool New York?" He said, "Honey, I've already lived through 3 cool New Yorks. You just need to know where to look for the next one." But she didn't want to go looking. When we got home, after a few more fucks into the abyss, she threatened to move back to Iowa again. I should have gone to see her in New York. Yeah, it was September 8th, 1985. A Sunday, muggy, very early in the day, late in the night, really a no man's time. 5:30 a.m., one of the few times of the day when the streets are just dead. The sun wouldn't be up for another hour, and me, I'm working my midnight to 8 a.m. shift at a building on Waverly, the NYU area, smack dab between Astor Place and Washington Square. So at 5:30, I went out to the deli on the corner to get a cup of coffee, and I get to the fire hydrant between Mercer and Broadway, and then I just hear this woman start yelling, screaming. It sounded far away, but on top of me, from up above. I was getting the deli ready for the morning rush that would begin in another hour or so. Nothing unusual. Stocking the grocery shelves, pulling the bagels out of the oven, pulling the cream cheeses out of the cooler and putting them into the display case. Just getting everything prepped for the day shift that would be in later. But then I stood in the kitchen, slicing up a tomato like 1 slice, 2 slice, 3 slice, 4 slice. Those screams echoed down between the buildings, especially with everything else being so dead quiet. Her voice stuck with me. She didn't sound helpless exactly. It was a real sharp no, 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 over and over again. She was definitely pleading with somebody to make him stop doing whatever, and then it was quiet for about 4 seconds. 4, 3, 2... It sounded like an explosion, making the whole roof shake, and I cut myself slicing the tomato, and my heart, it thumped in my chest. Boom, 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 boom. My hands, they shook, and I panicked. What just blew up above us? And I tried fixing my finger. My hands, they shook so much. I needed my worker to help bandage me up. Then me and him ran out the back door to see what happened. It was quiet again and still dark, and we saw the doorman, one of our regulars. He was coming down the block, and I ran up to him, but I couldn't even get words out yet. He asked me, was that an explosion? And he said he heard a screaming. It was high above. I said, no, I don't think so. I think something landed on top of us. And so we both looked up at 300 Mercer, one of the tallest buildings in the village. More than 30 stories up. The 4 of us cops all responded to the call from high up in 300 Mercer. We talked to the deli manager out back and tried to figure out how to check out his roof. The 4 of us piled into a freight elevator. The metal door creaked shut. The whole thing rattled and clunked and clanged the whole way up. One floor felt like 20 grinding in that thing. It let us out on the 2nd floor where we could access the deli's roof. I remember the tar paper crunching under my shoes. There weren't any lights up there. The only light we had was our flashlights and the street lamps at the corner of Broadway and Waverly beneath us. Then Benson rushed forward, and we took turns following, one after another, after we each saw what Benson saw. We looked down. We stood around her. In the middle of the roof, a woman was laying face down, and an arm and a leg were twisted up all wrong, and everything inside of her looked like it had, collapsed a little bit. In her body, it left a silhouette on the roof.
Okay, what happened exactly?
What happened was my wife is an artist, and I'm an artist, and we had a quarrel about the fact that I was more, exposed to the public than she was, and she went to the bedroom, and I went after her, and she went out of the window.
She jumped out of the window. How long ago did this happen?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
What's her name?
Anna Mendieta.
She does the last name?
Mendieta. The America Society is housed in an old mansion on the Upper East Side, a neo-federalist style building. It seemed an odd choice for Anna's memorial, very much the opposite of what I gathered were her leftist politics. I walked in, alone. I had no one to attend with. I barely even knew Anna, really. I was aware of Anna. I hope she was aware of me. We'd met only fleetingly, gallery openings. I admired her deeply. She was like an elder, a lodestar for me in my own pursuits, even though she was probably only 36. I was just a baby then, 21 years old. At the opening we shared, she danced, and she did not stop dancing for the entire night. Even though we barely met, it was impossible to think that this person who was so very alive would no longer dance. I walked into the America Society, a bit surprised by the white marble foyer. Massive marble columns stretched 2 floors up. A stately staircase wound up to the 2nd floor. I wanted to be inconspicuous, deferential, but I was very early, or at least I felt very early, because there were not many other mourners gathered when I arrived. I felt very visible among the art world types who I was very much aware of. Lucy Lepard was there. Carolee Schneemann was there. I had seen pictures of Schneemann performing interior scroll. It's a bit shocking to see someone in person who you know primarily from a photo of her naked, reading from a scroll she's just pulled from her vagina. Lowry Sims, a curator from the Met, was there. One girl, the only person around my own age, meandered around the foyer as if lost or unsure of what to do with herself. She was more or less like me, not sure if she belonged. I did not make eye contact with her. On the 2nd floor, I entered the Salon Simon Bolivar, a grand room where they held the memorial. The high ceilings were ornamented with wooden medallions exploding from the center like a daylily. A crystal chandelier hung in the middle while candelabras made light along the walls. Antique mirrors reflected hundreds of chairs that had been lined up in rows across the shining wooden floor. The seats had only been sporadically filled by then. I saw what I presumed to be Anna's family at one end of the room, but then I was stunned, truly aghast, disgusted enough to nearly walk out when I realized that the murderer was also in our midst. Or at least the man many of us suspected of murdering her, of throwing her 34 stories to her death. The artist Carl Andre, Anna's husband. He sat in the same room as her family. And not only was the murderer present, he had the gall to bring a girlfriend with him. She filed back and forth, fetching him coffee, whatever he asked. The man didn't even have enough decency to wear clothes appropriate for a memorial. He wore his workman's coveralls, apparently his de facto outfit, his trademark. Some occasions demand that we abandon our petty, macho trademarks, but not him, apparently. A minute after I feared very few people would attend, the room filled over capacity. The door to the Salon Bolivar threaded in a thick crowd of people. Probably more than 300 mourners attended. Art world types and Anna's Latino friends, those who were outside of the downtown art scene's vision. I'd never really seen such a mixture of people before. Unannounced, a Cuban man set up a record player and began playing Afro-Cuban records, paying homage to Anna's life, her full life, and melted away the room's otherwise staid decor. I didn't talk to many people, but I was struck by how it didn't feel like a memorial. It felt like an art opening. Many of these art world types talked to each other as if it was any other gallery party. I was very put off by this. I had a feeling that there were many interlopers among us, though I suppose some of them may have said the same about me, because as visible as I felt at the beginning, I knew that I'd become invisible as the crowds filed in. Many of them obviously reserved their own shock for the room's most glaring interloper. I heard a woman say, "The murderer has dared to appear here," loudly, not even trying to conceal the same disgust that I'd felt upon seeing him. Many people stood, but the row that he sat in with his girlfriend remained empty throughout the night. I wish I knew what Anna's sister thought when she was called up to the room's lectern. I sat by myself for a time, but the other early arrival, the girl my age, soon took the seat next to mine. I had begun to assume that she was another art world hanger-on, somebody who wanted to be there simply because it was a scene. But as Anna's sister spoke, I noticed that this white girl was trying very hard to not cry. And when the sister read Anna's poetry, the girl had no more guises. She was crying. I searched my pockets for a handkerchief, a tissue, even though I very well knew I carried no such things. I unbuttoned the cuff of my sleeve and presented it to her, hanging it in front of her. I whispered, "Please, feel free to use my sleeve as a tissue." She looked at the cuff and then turned to me. She obviously didn't understand. She thought I was crazy to be offering my sleeve, and perhaps I was, but I was very much caught up in the mood. I motioned the sleeve again, insisting that she use it. She smiled. Who is this strange man? She may have very well been thinking. And I smiled back. I assume it was the only time either of us smiled throughout the entire 3-hour memorial. She shook her head. Yes, this is a crazy person. Yet, she took the edge of my sleeve between 2 fingers and dabbed tears away from her cheeks. When the memorial finished, I meant to formally introduce myself, but the girl had disappeared. I attended the memorial that the Mendietas held in Iowa City. Celia asked me to go, but I probably would have gone anyway. She wanted me to read everyone a letter that she had sent. She said she felt too devastated to read it at the New York memorial. She would have broken down after every word she told me. But I do wonder if she just didn't feel worthy around all those artists. Not that I was much different. I definitely didn't read it for her in Iowa. I wanted to, but I couldn't get up the courage to speak in front of everyone. I didn't know anyone there except Bent, but he was Celia's friend. I barely knew him. I really wish I read it, though. Celia wrote that Anna was the reason she was an artist. She was an artist. She didn't question herself in the letter. And she said she'd do whatever she could to continue Anna's legacy. I don't think she knew how she might do that yet, but it was very hopeful. I wanted this to be the Celia who'd answer the phone next time.